Try and fix it, and you say I've lost control, gone out of my mind. But I say you made it this way. When you made the bed that you sleep in, you made all the lies I believed in. Well, you made our love feeling ever.
All right, and going from there, we got the rest of the really great news for Bryan this year. You released your first full-length studio album. Okay. And it's right here. This is called Nothing Left to Burn. And it's an awesome record. It's got some pretty sweet artwork on it.
Yes. Yeah,
little plug there. But it's got a lot of, it's got 8 songs on here. 6 of which Bryan wrote either with other various co-writers or by himself. And then there's one on here that was written by Mark Lonesway, Mark Carson, and Mike Willis. Mm-hmm. And then a cover of the classic Criss song, Wicked Game. Yep. Before we move into the songs on here, why did you choose Wicked Game?
Well, a couple reasons. A couple months ago, I was doing a show, and I wanted to do a cover song, and I wanted to do something that not a lot of people this day and age were that familiar with, but was recognizable, and something that I could definitely make into my own sound and my own vibe. So we went to rehearsal, and I sort of had done like a little, work tape of the idea of how I wanted to present the song at the show, and the band just sort of came up with it from there. And when we got into the studio, we were able to just really hone in on what we had done previously. So it was kind of an evolution from that, but. Basically I just wanted to do something that was, recognizable but different.
Sure.
And show my artist ability beyond just being a songwriter.
Sure. I mean, anytime you're able to interpret a song to show that you can make it yours in some way, that always puts that out there, and that's a cool thing. In regards to this record, give me an idea of sort of the feel of the record.
I think it's very vibey, and for a country record, it's not the norm. I don't think. I think, it really shows what I do. I'm very proud of this record. I really believe that music is meant to be progressive, no matter what kind of genre you're in, and I feel like, there's some risk involved in that, but there's also a huge reward, and I think that. This one really fits well with my soul and with my heart and where I want to be as an artist. So the songs, there's some really up-tempo, high-energy stuff.
Sure. That
has some syncopated rhythms that you don't normally hear in a country song. And then you have some really heartbreaking songs on there as well that, and there's some angry songs too, which, you don't really get angry a lot of times in country music. So.
Well, I think... just, when you see the record and you see Nothing Left to Burn.
I look pissed off too.
And you're staring down the person who has the record in your hand. You're like, oh Lord, what's he going to do to me now? Yeah. And then you read titles like Bridges and Fire, Broken, You Win the War, and obviously the cover, Wicked Game, which has a very powerful connotation to it, or just it does have an edge to it, and that's obviously... sort of saturated through the whole, package in itself.
Yeah, it's kind of dark, and there's some light overtones on some of it, but for the most part, it's a pretty dark record.
Well, I've listened to the whole thing a number of times. Actually, listened to it on Spotify. Those of you who are Spotify users, you can find this record on Spotify. And you have different ones at different times that you sort of start to lean in. And you're like, oh, I'm really digging that. Or Bridges and Fire, is a great starter. I guess no
pun intended.
That's a good way to start the record. If I'm not mistaken, Still is one of those that has some really interesting rhythms in it and some different stuff.
Yeah, well, it's actually it's more of a melody thing for Still.
Sure.
There's a lot of vocal movement in that, and I think actually that's probably the most commercial song on there that I've written. As far as being able to be on radio and things like that. So.
Sure. I also do think, this is my opinion, and my opinion is only worth whatever it's worth what I think it's worth. Bridges and Fires, I think, could easily be on the record too, or on the radio.
Yeah.
It also was produced by Mark Lonesway, who's a great artist, songwriter, and producer in town. And, you know, he did a wonderful job on this record. Tell me a little bit about what it's like working with Mark and his sort of production skills.
That was great. I mean, you know, Mark and I are really good friends. He was in my wedding, and just a really great guy. But above and beyond that, we had talked about putting a record together for a while, and he's a great guitar player, great singer, great writer, great singer. I mean, he's just he's kind of the full package. And so, you know, it was really easy when we went to a studio, and it was funny in some of the pre-production meetings when we were picking songs and saying, well, if we do this one, how would you want to do it? I mean, everything that he said to me, like his ideas were pretty spot on with what I had wanted myself. So, you know, in that sense, musically, like it just worked really well. And then, you know, when you're recording with one of your best friends, it's always just sort of a blast. You know, I'd go into the studio with a bag of chips and a bottle of whiskey, and you know, one of the two was going to do the trick that day, whatever it was. You know, so.
What was it? Obviously, it was fun, and you had a good time doing that. But what were some of the challenges of recording a full length record?
You know, honestly, I think when we were tracking with the band, you know, this was I think in a lot of cases, this was the first time they had heard the song. When, you know, we go into a studio, they had never heard the song before. Mark had written out charts, and you know, they didn't really know much about how they wanted to do it, you know. So, you know, there was a couple times where we had to say, okay, well, you know what, that didn't really work, so let's try it this way, you know. And so, for me, you know, these are my babies, the songs that I wrote, and, you know, I really wanted to do them the best we possibly could, you know. So, it was kind of gut-wrenching at times when, you know, you go in and you hear something and it's not done the way that you think it should be done.
Sure,
you know?
Sure.
But I mean,
I know that well.
we worked with really great musicians, and Mark and I, like I said, we were on the same page. So when we heard something that we didn't necessarily like, it was fixed just like that.
Sure.
So, I mean, those guys were great. They were really professional, and all the musicians on there, and you know, everything came together pretty easily. And you know, when I say that, it really didn't happen that often. You know, maybe one song.
Sure.
So.
Were there any just in regards to you personally, and like getting in there every day, and it is for people who've never recorded a record, you know, me and you now have that experience. I've done it before myself too. It does take some energy to sort of really get what it is you want, you know, and to be able to perform. It's completely different than performing live. To perform on a record, you obviously have some room to sort of cheat in some senses because you can take different takes and things, but there is a feeling that you need to portray in those songs. And like, what was it like trying to get that to happen every day? Was there challenges in that, or?
I mean, especially when we were jumping from you know, higher energy songs to low energy songs and vice versa, you know, or happy songs to sad songs, fitting the mood. And you know, we would record maybe 2 vocals in a given night. I mean, we took, you know, 3 or 4 hours on each song just to make sure that, you know, every part was there, and then we would come back in later and listen and make sure everything was good, and if it wasn't, we'd go back in and fix certain parts, you know, that weren't right. So I mean, you know, it was hard to get the vibe on some of those right off the bat.
Sure.
Know? Especially towards the end of the night when your voice is starting to wear down a little bit, and you know, you're not quite. It's not that you're not hitting the notes. There's just sort of like I get this tone out of my voice when I get tired that just doesn't record well, you know.
Sure.
Live, you wouldn't be able to tell, but in a studio, it picks up everything, like you said.
Absolutely.
It's totally different. So.
Well, congratulations, Bryan.
Thanks,
This is a really great record.
Thank you.
If you haven't gotten it already, go ahead and get it. Really awesome record. And check this record out too as well. You can hear Bryan's song, If You Could See Me Now. Before we go, Bryan, give us a little bit of idea of what's coming up in the year ahead of you, and what direction you're taking, what plans you have, and then we'll sign off.
Yeah, well, you know, I'm basically just going to shop this record around to the labels around town and publishers, and see what sort of momentum we can build, and in the meantime I'm gonna start writing for the next one, you know. So it never ends, you know.
Sure.
So we're gonna keep on going and see what we can come up with next time.
Awesome, man. Well, we wish you the best of luck here at
man.
Nashville Art Makers.
Appreciate it.
You can check out in the blog, you'll see everywhere you can find Bryan. We'll have some more in-depth sort of look into this record, and we're just glad to have you. Glad to have you, Bryan.
Thanks, man.
You got it. And thanks for coming. We'll see you next month.
Hard to see.